the dancing hunter of Yucatan's emerald coast. In the shallow lagoons of Telchac Puerto, where turquoise waters meet white sand beaches along Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, North America's rarest heron performs the most spectacular hunting dance in the avian world. The Reddish Egret, a bird that seems to have forgotten everything about heron dignity, explodes through ankle-deep water with wings spread wide, zigzagging, leaping, and spinning in what appears to be magnificent chaos. But every movement is calculated, every pirouette purposeful. This is one of only 897 breeding pairs that call the Yucatan coast home, representing roughly 1/4 of the species' documented global population. Here, in these coastal wetlands where freshwater cenotes meet the Gulf of Mexico, this threatened species finds everything it needs: abundant prey, protected nesting sites in dense mangroves, and the kind of pristine, undeveloped coastline that has become dangerously rare. A portrait painted in slate and cinnamon. The Reddish Egret stands among the most striking of wading birds, measuring 27 to 32 inches in length with a wingspan approaching 4 feet. Unlike its dignified cousins who maintain sleek profiles, the Reddish Egret sports a perpetually disheveled appearance, its most characteristic feature being shaggy, lance-shaped plumes that extend from crown to upper breast. These feathers create a distinctive maned look, particularly dramatic during breeding season when they can grow 7 to 9 centimeters long. The species exists in 2 distinct color morphs, a characteristic that makes it unique among North American herons. The dark morph, comprising 80 to 90% of the population, wears a slate blue to medium gray body adorned with a spectacular head and neck of reddish brown, chestnut, or cinnamon plumage. The white morph, comprising only 10 to 20% of individuals, appears entirely white but shares all other physical characteristics with its darker cousins. Remarkably, this color determination is lifelong, established in the downy chick stage and never changing, unlike the little blue heron where white is merely a juvenile phase. A single nest can contain both dark and white chicks, and pairs freely mate across morphs. The genetics reveal a fascinating pattern. 2 dark birds can produce white offspring, but 2 white birds can never produce dark chicks. During breeding season, the bird's appearance transforms dramatically. The bill, normally dusky, becomes strikingly bicolored, the basal half turning bright pink or flesh-colored while the outer third remains jet black. The legs shift from dark to cobalt blue or turquoise, and the bare skin around the eyes blazes violet blue, creating an almost startling intensity of color. These seasonal transformations provide a visual timeline of the breeding cycle, the colors intensifying during courtship, then gradually fading as nesting duties consume the adult's energy. The Reddish Egret's build reveals its active lifestyle. Larger than a snowy egret but smaller than a great egret, it possesses powerful legs measuring nearly 12 to 15 centimeters at the tarsus, providing both wading capability and the strength needed for its energetic hunting technique. The bill, measuring 7 to 9 centimeters, is long, straight, heavy, and dagger-like, a precision instrument for the lightning strikes that punctuate its feeding dance. Pale yellow eyes provide keen vision for detecting the slightest prey movement even through sun-dappled water. The T-Rex of the flats performs its feeding ballet. Pete Dunn, the renowned naturalist, dubbed the Reddish Egret the Tyrannosaurus Rex of the flats, and nowhere is this more apparent than when the bird feeds. In the stately and dignified world of herons, where great blues stand frozen like statues and little blues creep forward with methodical patience, the Reddish Egret is the swashbuckling pirate, bold, rapacious, and utterly captivating. The hunting dance begins when the egret spots potential prey in shallow water, typically 2 to 6 inches deep. The bird explodes into motion, running with long strides through the shallows, head cocked to one side. It staggers sideways, suddenly changes direction, leaps into the air, spins in dizzying circles. The wings flare open, sometimes fully extended overhead, sometimes partially spread for balance, creating dramatic shadows on the water's surface. The bird dashes, lurches, zigzags, hops intermittently, all while its feet stir up sediment from the bottom, flushing hidden prey from their refuges. This apparent frenzy serves multiple purposes. The erratic movements confuse and disorient small fish, causing them to scatter in panic. The stirred sediment flushes prey from hiding places in algae mats and soft mud. The sudden direction changes prevent escape routes. But perhaps most ingeniously, the egret employs a technique called canopy feeding. It suddenly freezes mid-dance, extends its wings in a graceful arc over its head, and transforms into a living umbrella. In the shadow beneath those outstretched wings, small fish instinctively seek what appears to be protective shelter from sun and predators, swimming eagerly toward what they believe is safety. They are swimming straight into a trap. The shadow simultaneously reduces sun glare, allowing the egret to see prey movements with crystal clarity, while the dark canopy camouflages the predator's form from below. When hunting with open wings, the egret most often orients into the wind and sun. This isn't random. Running into wind with wings spread provides increased lift, giving the bird sustained speed and improved maneuverability during pursuit. It's aerial physics applied to shallow water hunting, transforming the bird into something between a kite and a missile. The strike comes with lightning precision, an abrupt stab with that dagger-like bill, a flick of the head, and a small fish disappears down the egret's throat. Then the dance resumes, an endless ballet of chaos and calculation that can continue for hours across the tidal flats. Research in Texas's Laguna Madre revealed that adults are 30 to 250% more successful foragers than juveniles, with adult success rates reaching 32 to 42% compared to juveniles' 25 to 29%. Interestingly, canopy feeding, wing flicking, and foot stirring showed the highest success rates, yet these specialized techniques were employed relatively infrequently. The egrets spend most of their time in active running and chasing behaviors. When prey becomes concentrated in drying pools or creeks, reddish egrets abandon their normal solitary hunting to join large feeding assemblages with pelicans, terns, ibises, spoonbills, and other herons. In these group feeding frenzies, success rates increase by 32 to 44%. This active foraging strategy distinguishes the reddish egret from every other North American heron. The little blue heron shows the highest success rate per unit time among 7 heron species studied, employing a patient stand and wait strategy that conserves energy. The great blue heron wades slowly or stands completely motionless like a statue, waiting for prey to come within striking range. The snowy egret, while active, performs what observers describe as a fast-paced rumba, rather than the reddish egret's frenzied ballet. The tree-colored heron spins in rhythmic circular patterns like a wind-up doll, but at a measured tempo. Only the reddish egret throws caution, and apparently sanity, to the wind, and only the reddish egret can successfully exploit the barren, open tidal flats where patient hunters would starve. A menu of minnows in the mangrove maze. The reddish egret's prey preferences reflect its coastal specialization. In the shallow lagoons and tidal flats of the Yucatan coast, its primary prey consists of small minnow-like fish, sheepshead minnows, sailfin mollies, pinfish, striped mullet, various killifish species, and tidewater silversides. These small fish, typically less than 5 centimeters in length, school in the shallow protected waters where mangrove roots meet sandy flats. The bird concentrates on highly adaptable fish species capable of surviving in harsh, often hypersaline environments with low prey diversity. Killer fish of the genus Cyprinodon appear throughout the egret's range, thriving in the variable salinity conditions created where freshwater cenotes discharge into coastal lagoons. These fish instinctively seek shade, a behavioral trait the egret exploits ruthlessly with its canopy feeding technique. Secondary prey include shrimp, crabs, frogs, tadpoles, and occasionally aquatic insects, though fish dominate the diet. The energy-intensive foraging style requires abundant small prey, and the Yucatan's productive coastal ecosystem delivers. Here, the mixing of fresh groundwater from cenotes with Gulf of Mexico saltwater creates nutrient-rich conditions that support exceptional populations of small forage fish. The egret feeds in specific microhabitats: salt and mud flats where gentle tides expose productive feeding grounds, shallow channels between mangrove prop roots, coastal lagoons with soft bottoms and algae mats, and even temporary pools created when storms wash saltwater onto barrier islands. It seeks water typically between 5 and 15 centimeters deep, shallow enough for active running but deep enough to hold concentrated fish populations. The substrate must be soft enough for foot stirring but firm enough to support rapid movement. Where emerald waters meet ancient limestone. Telchac Puerto sits on the northern Yucatan coast approximately 65 kilometers northeast of Mérida, a small fishing village of 2,000 inhabitants positioned where the Gulf of Mexico laps against the ancient limestone shelf of the peninsula. This coastal realm unfolds as a mosaic of pristine white sand beaches, dense mangrove forests, and crystalline coastal lagoons, a landscape shaped by water both above and below the surface. Beneath this coast lies a vast underground aquifer system carved through limestone over millions of years. This hidden network emerges at the coastline through cenotes, dramatic sinkholes with turquoise waters, and countless springs that bubble up through mangrove roots. The San Crisanto area just 15 minutes east of Telchac Puerto contains the most extensive mangrove area in Yucatan state, with over 1,000 hectares of protected forest laced with hand-dug canals that reconnect 45 cenotes. This marriage of fresh and salt water creates one of the Gulf of Mexico's most productive ecosystems. The mangroves themselves are architectural marvels. Red mangroves stand on stilt-like prop roots directly in the water, creating an intricate maze of channels where sunlight filters through the canopy in dappled patterns. Their roots form a three-dimensional labyrinth where juvenile fish hide and grow, safe from larger predators. White and black mangroves occupy slightly higher ground, their branches forming dense thickets that host rookeries where egrets, herons, spoonbills, ibises, and cormorants nest in mixed colonies. These forests have shown remarkable resilience. After Hurricane Isidore in 2002 caused extensive die-off when roads blocked natural water flow, the local community hand-dug 11 to 12 kilometers of canals to restore hydrological function. By 2007, the ecosystem had recovered, fish populations increased by 25%, and bird numbers surged. The coastal lagoons shimmer in varying shades. Some are deep emerald, others pale turquoise where cenotes feed them, and still others blush pink from hypersaline conditions and the microorganisms thriving there. The famous Laguna Rosada and nearby Weymouthton Refuge attract thousands of American flamingos, up to 43,000 individuals in the broader Yucatan region, with an unusual 20,000 arriving at San Crisanto for nesting in 2023. These hypersaline lagoons provide brine shrimp that turn flamingos their characteristic pink, while the brackish lagoons offer the small fish that sustain the egrets. Water temperature remains warm year-round, ranging from 27 to 30 degrees Celsius, creating ideal conditions for the cold-blooded prey fish. Salinity varies dramatically across this coastal zone, from nearly zero in the cenotes to 36.5 parts per thousand in open Gulf waters to over 40 in the hypersaline lagoons. This salinity gradient creates diverse microhabitats supporting different species, allowing multiple wading bird species to coexist without direct competition. Tidal action remains gentle here, with minimal tidal range typically less than 1 meter. This creates the calm, shallow waters essential for the Reddish Egret's active foraging style. Strong tides or wave action would make the energetic dancing impossible, but Telchac Puerto's protected position provides the stable conditions the species requires. A stage shared with hundreds of feathered players. The Yucatan Peninsula's northern coast represents one of the most important coastal ecosystems in the Gulf of Mexico for wading birds and shorebirds, with over 500 bird species recorded on the peninsula. The region serves as a critical migration corridor, with over 200 migratory species passing through, including 80% of the continental population of blue-winged teal that winters in or passes through these mangroves. In the mangrove channels and lagoons surrounding Telchac Puerto, the Reddish Egret shares the stage with a spectacular supporting cast. Great blue herons stand like grey statues in deeper channels. Great egrets, all white with yellow bills, wade elegantly through the shallows. Snowy egrets, distinguished by their bright yellow feet, golden slippers, actively feed in the shallowest waters. Little blue herons, slate blue as adults but white as juveniles, creep methodically through the margins. Tree-colored herons display their distinctive white bellies and neck stripes while employing their own version of canopy feeding. The night shift brings yellow-crowned night herons with their striking black and white head patterns, specialists in capturing crabs from the mudflats after dark. Black-crowned night herons, the most widespread heron species globally, join them in nocturnal foraging. Green herons, small and stocky, hunt from mangrove branches and famously use bait, twigs, insects, or bread, to lure fish within striking range. Beyond the herons, the ecosystem teems with other water birds. Roseate spoonbills sweep their spatulate bills through shallow water, their pink plumage rivaling the flamingos for spectacular color. White ibises probe mudflats with curved pink bills. Wood storks, large and distinctive with dark bills and black flight feathers, nest in colonies. Neotropic cormorants dive for fish then perch on mangroves to dry their wings. Brown pelicans plunge dive from the air. Magnificent frigate birds with forked tails soar overhead on 7-foot wingspans, and ospreys hover before plunging talons first for fish. Protected areas throughout the region safeguard this biodiversity. The Rio Lagato's Biosphere Reserve on the eastern coast encompasses 150,000 acres with 395 documented bird species. The Rio Celestine Biosphere Reserve on the western coast has been submitted as a World Heritage Site candidate. The San Crisanto Wildlife Management Unit won the 2010 UN Development Programme Equator Prize for Community Conservation. These protected areas form a network supporting the Reddish Egret and hundreds of other species. North America's rarest heron faces an uncertain future. The Reddish Egret carries the dubious distinction of being North America's rarest heron, listed as near threatened on the IUCN Red List with a decreasing population trend. Global population estimates range from 5,000 to 10,000 mature individuals, with approximately 3,500 to 4,250 breeding pairs worldwide. The United States hosts only 1,500 to 2,000 breeding pairs, most in Texas, or 950 to 1,050 pairs, and Florida, 480 pairs. The species is state-listed as threatened in both Texas and Florida. Mexico holds the majority of the global population, with the Yucatan Peninsula supporting 897 breeding pairs on its Caribbean coast, roughly 21 to 25% of the documented global breeding population. This makes the Yucatan one of the most critical population centers for species conservation, alongside the Pacific coast of Mexico, or 1,108 pairs, Cuba, or 1,000 to 2,500 individuals, and the Bahamas, 200 to 250 pairs. The species nearly disappeared from existence once before. During the plume hunting craze of the late 1800s and early 1900s, when egret feathers decorated ladies' hats and clothing, the reddish egret was completely extirpated from Florida by 1910. No birds were recorded in Florida between 1927 and 1937, the species had been hunted to local extinction. Protection under the 1918 Migratory Bird Treaty Act allowed slow recovery, but the Florida population today represents only 10% of pre-hunting levels. Interestingly, the white morph was once more common than the dark morph, but hunting pressure reversed this ratio. The white bird's conspicuous plumage made them preferred targets for plume hunters. Today's threats are more insidious than shotguns. Climate change represents the most significant danger, particularly sea level rise causing habitat inundation and loss of the shallow coastal foraging areas the species requires. More frequent and stronger tropical storms bring direct mortality and habitat destruction. Changing water chemistry, salinity patterns, and temperature affect prey fish distribution. The species is listed as a yellow alert tipping point species for having lost more than 50% of its population in the past 50 years. Coastal development for tourism and residential areas continues destroying and fragmenting habitat. Mangrove forests fall to shrimp aquaculture. Coastal engineering projects and dredging eliminate tidal flats. Urban runoff degrades water quality. Human disturbance at breeding colonies, from recreational boating, beach activities, and fishing, causes nest abandonment and reduces breeding success. In Mexico, chicks were historically harvested for fishing bait, adding direct human predation to the list of threats. The reddish egret's extreme habitat specialization makes it particularly vulnerable. It is more tied to saltwater than any other North American heron or egret, rarely found inland or in freshwater. It requires open, unvegetated tidal flats typically less than 15 centimeters deep, specific habitat that's easily destroyed and difficult to restore. It nests colonially on coastal islands, requiring protection from terrestrial predators and human disturbance. Its narrow habitat requirements mean that as climate change and development eliminate suitable habitat, the species has few alternatives. Yet the bird has demonstrated remarkable resilience, recovering twice from near extinction, first after plume hunting, then again after population declines in the mid-20th century. Both major North American populations increased and expanded their ranges under full protection from the 1970s through early 2000s. This resilience provides hope, but recent decades have seen concerning declines resume, particularly in Florida where the population dropped from around 400 pairs to 260 to 300 pairs by 2015. An indicator species signals ecosystem health. The reddish egret plays multiple ecological roles in the coastal ecosystems it inhabits. As a mid-level predator, It regulates populations of small forage fish, particularly killifish species. This predation helps maintain balance in the hypersaline and brackish environments where few other predators can operate effectively. The bird concentrates on sheep's head minnows and sailfin mollies, highly adaptable species that can reach explosive population densities in favorable conditions. By controlling these populations, the egret helps prevent boom and bust cycles that can destabilize shallow coastal food webs. The species functions as an indicator of coastal ecosystem health. Its presence signals healthy shallow coastal ecosystems with good water quality, abundant prey populations, and minimal human disturbance. Its strict habitat requirements make it sensitive to environmental changes. The reddish egret has been called a living barometer of humanity's impacts on shallow coastal ecosystems by the American Bird Conservancy. Where egrets thrive, the broader ecosystem typically remains functional. Where they disappear, ecosystem degradation has likely occurred. In colonial nesting situations, reddish egrets contribute to nutrient cycling. The birds transfer nutrients from aquatic systems to terrestrial island vegetation through guano deposition. Nesting colonies can support dozens of species simultaneously: herons, egrets, ibises, spoonbills, pelicans, cormorants, and anhingas, creating nutrient hotspots that enrich island vegetation. Like owls, the egrets regurgitate all indigestible prey parts, or bones, scales, etc., returning these materials to the local nutrient cycle. The egret's energy-intensive foraging style reflects the high productivity of coastal ecosystems. The dancing, running, and wing flapping require tremendous caloric expenditure. Researchers describe it as having low capture efficiency compared to patient stand and wait hunters. The bird must capture many small prey items to meet its energy demands, which is only possible in highly productive systems with abundant forage fish. The Yucatan's coastal lagoons, enriched by groundwater discharge from the cenotes system and nutrient cycling through mangrove forests, provide exactly this productivity. As prey, egret eggs and chicks support populations of raccoons, coyotes, great-tailed grackles, and other nest predators. This makes the egret an important component of island food webs, though most mortality occurs not from predation but during migration, when birds face the challenges of crossing open water between coastal stopover sites. Year-round residents of the tropical coast. Unlike many North American herons that migrate seasonally, reddish egrets on the Yucatan Peninsula are year-round residents. The 897 breeding pairs present on the Caribbean coast of the Yucatan represent a stable, resident population that remains in the region throughout the year. This residency pattern differs from northern populations in Texas and Florida, where some individuals undertake partial migrations or post-breeding dispersal movements. The species shows a complex migration pattern overall. Approximately 25% of some breeding populations migrate, while the rest remain resident. In Florida, southern populations in the Keys and Florida Bay remain year-round, while more northern breeders may disperse southward or along the coast after breeding. Texas populations are mostly resident but some move south into Mexico for winter. Pacific coast Mexican birds show dispersal along the coast. Immature birds are more likely to disperse widely. Banded Texas birds have been recovered as far south as Guatemala and El Salvador, while vagrants have reached Massachusetts, California, and numerous inland states. On the Yucatan, the warm year-round climate, stable food supplies, and lack of winter freezes eliminate the need for migration. Water temperatures remain between 27 and 30 degrees Celsius throughout the year, supporting continuous productivity of the small fish populations the egrets depend upon. The mangrove lagoon systems maintain their functionality year-round, though seasonal patterns do affect productivity. Breeding timing in the Yucatan shows flexibility, with nesting occurring throughout much of the year rather than following the rigid spring breeding season typical of temperate populations. This tropical breeding strategy allows the egrets to time reproduction with local environmental conditions, rainfall patterns, fish abundance, and other factors that vary annually. Courtship displays can occur across multiple months, with pairs forming and nest building beginning when conditions are optimal. Post-breeding, young reddish egrets from the Yucatan may undertake local dispersal movements along the coast but generally remain within the broader Caribbean coastal region. The genetic connectivity between Yucatan populations and those in Texas, Florida, Cuba, and other parts of the range remains an area of active research, with implications for conservation planning. The dance continues at dawn and dusk. Reddish egrets are primarily crepuscular, most active during dawn and dusk when lighting conditions and prey behavior optimize hunting success. In the soft light of early morning, when the sun rises over the Gulf of Mexico and paints the shallow lagoons in shades of pink and orange, the egrets begin their first feeding bouts. The low angle of sunlight reduces glare, making prey detection easier even without the canopy feeding technique. Water remains calm before daytime winds develop, creating ideal conditions for active foraging. The birds can hunt throughout the day and into the night if needed, but dawn and dusk represent peak activity periods. During the heat of midday, egrets often rest in the shade of mangroves or on protected beaches, conserving energy for the next feeding session. As the sun lowers toward the western horizon and temperatures moderate, activity resumes. The evening feeding bout can extend past sunset if prey remains abundant and accessible. While normally hunting alone and aggressively defending individual feeding territories, reddish egrets alter their social structure when conditions warrant. When small fish become concentrated in drying pools, shrinking creeks, or areas where tides trap schools in shallow water, egrets abandon territoriality to join large mixed species feeding assemblages. These feeding frenzies can include dozens of birds, reddish egrets, other herons and egrets, brown pelicans, terns, ibises, and spoonbills, all converging on the concentrated prey. In these situations, the egret's group foraging success increases by 32 to 44% compared to solitary hunting. The high energetic cost of active foraging means reddish egrets must feed extensively to meet their energy requirements. During breeding season, when adults must provision growing chicks, feeding pressure intensifies. Like other herons, adults feeding chicks consume approximately 4 times more food than non-breeding individuals. Parents make repeated trips from distant foraging sites, averaging 15 kilometers each way, back to nesting colonies, regurgitating partially digested fish directly into chicks' mouths during early development, then dropping whole fish for older chicks to swallow. Juveniles show even less efficiency than adults, with success rates 30 to 250% lower. Young birds must learn the complex foraging technique through trial and error, a learning period that contributes to the species' delayed breeding age of 3 to 4 years. The intricate choreography of the feeding dance, the timing of wing movements, the reading of prey behavior, and the precision striking all require practice. This extended learning period makes juvenile survival crucial for population maintenance. A conservation blueprint for the future. International recognition of the reddish egret's precarious status has spawned coordinated conservation efforts. The Reddish Egret Conservation Action Plan, developed in 2014 and updated in 2022, represents a coordinated effort across the United States, Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean. The plan aims to increase the breeding population to 7,500 pairs within 5 years, from approximately 4,250 pairs, focusing on managing factors affecting populations, ensuring long-term stewardship of priority habitats, implementing monitoring programs, and clarifying population status in poorly known portions of the range. The Reddish Egret International Working Group, led by researchers at Texas State University and supported by organizations including the American Bird Conservancy, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and ProNatura Mexico, coordinates range-wide research and management. GPS satellite tracking studies have revealed migration patterns and identified critical stopover sites like Laguna San Andres in Tamaulipas, Mexico. During Hurricane Irma in 2017, GPS-tracked birds demonstrated the species' resilience by surviving the category for storm sheltering in mangrove forests, proving the value of these ecosystems for storm protection. Protected area networks throughout the range now safeguard key breeding and foraging sites. In the Yucatan, the Celestine Biosphere Reserve provides protected habitat for reddish egrets and hundreds of other species. The San Crisanto Wildlife Management Unit represents a successful community-based conservation model, where local fishermen manage 1,020 hectares of mangroves and lagoons, generating 30% of community revenue through ecotourism while documenting notable increases in bird populations. This model demonstrates that conservation and sustainable economic development can coexist. Habitat restoration projects continue throughout the range. The San Crisanto Canal restoration, where the community hand-dug kilometers of waterways to reconnect cenotes after Hurricane Isidora, resulted in a 25% increase in fish populations and corresponding increases in wading bird abundance. Deepwater Horizon settlement funding supports Florida habitat protection and restoration. Mangrove restoration in Laguna Madre benefits both Texas and Mexican populations. Public education campaigns focus on minimizing human disturbance at breeding colonies and foraging sites. The American Bird Conservancy's Coastal Bird Campaign promotes fish, swim, and play from 50 yards away, encouraging beachgoers to give nesting and feeding birds adequate space. Birding tourism increasingly supports conservation, with destinations like the Yucatan's mangrove tours generating economic value from intact ecosystems and creating local incentives for habitat protection. Climate change remains the most challenging threat to address, requiring global action on greenhouse gas emissions while simultaneously creating habitat connectivity that allows species to shift their ranges as conditions change. Sea level rise projections suggest significant losses of low-lying coastal habitat, making protection of areas where habitat can migrate inland, rather than being blocked by development, critical for long-term persistence. Conclusion: dancing on the edge. The Reddish Egret of Telchac Puerto embodies both the remarkable resilience and profound vulnerability of coastal ecosystems. Here, where freshwater cenotes meet the Gulf of Mexico, where mangroves create architectural masterpieces of prop roots and canopy, where the Yucatan's limestone foundation shapes the hydrology of an entire coast, this extraordinary bird performs its survival dance. With 897 breeding pairs, the Yucatan Peninsula represents one of the species' last strongholds, a critical refuge as habitat disappears elsewhere. The egret's dancing feeding behavior, so unlike any other heron, so spectacularly animated, so seemingly chaotic yet precisely calculated, has evolved to exploit the shallow, open flats of tropical and subtropical coasts. It's a strategy that works only in specific conditions, making the bird an indicator of ecosystem health and a symbol of what we stand to lose. As climate change drives seas higher and development fragments the coast, the question becomes whether these egrets will have anywhere left to dance. But the Yucatan offers hope. The community-led restoration at San Crisanto demonstrates that damaged ecosystems can recover with human dedication. The Protected Area Network safeguards critical habitat. The International Conservation Working Group coordinates research and management across borders. The species has survived extinction once before and recovered, proving its resilience when given the chance. In the end, the fate of the reddish egret depends on choices we make about coasts, whether to preserve the mangroves that protect shorelines and nurture biodiversity, whether to maintain the shallow flats and lagoons where egrets hunt, whether to address the climate change that threatens to inundate these low-lying ecosystems. The dance continues for now in the shallows of Telchac Puerto, but the music could stop unless we act. That shaggy pirate of the flats deserves to keep dancing, and the coastal ecosystems deserve to remain functional for all the life they support, from microscopic plankton to magnificent dancing egrets, from small fishing communities to international wildlife tourism. The choice is ours.
Přines toho ptáka nebo co?
Jak motorce.
Proč?
Tam loděj.
Už tam jsou, jo?